information in a short amount of time. So I try to leave this open at the end. Any questions that you have that I can respond to here while we're all together?
Hey, so on Alpha, you said invite people to it. Do you think that this is a good setting for like inviting, non-believers that like, hey, we're just friends, like our neighbor, we're friends with or something, or do you think that it's like, hey, a better setting for believers that just aren't going to church here, or neither of those?
Yeah, so the question is, who are like good invitations, or who's kind of a good target invite for Alpha and where they're at in their faith beliefs? So I would say, and I'm going to default here to Elizabeth in just a second because she's done Alpha, and she's a great person too if you want to grab her at a table afterwards and ask her about it. I would say it's an everyone experience. So for the person who is a Christian who just kind of needs like a reminder of what are the basic like core things that we believe, it's compelling teaching, it's meaningful stuff, the conversation will be rich. I think it will edify anybody who has any element of belief in Jesus. Alpha is really built for those who don't. And so the nature of the conversation and the nature of the material, the content that comes to the video teaching is kind of anticipating that you don't know Jesus yet. And so this is like, hey, you may have thought Christians were all one way or churches were all one way, but you've never really gotten to know Jesus. And so this is I wouldn't go as far as to say like the most like aggressive, atheistic, I hate everybody, like I don't even like you, Grant, why are you talking to me? It'd be a tough invite for them. But I think anybody that is like, oh yeah, I always wanted to get to know Jesus a little bit, or I've always been curious about Christianity, but I don't believe it, I don't want to believe it, I don't plan on believing it. This is going to be the type of material and conversation that's really, really helpful to those people too. So I would say the person who already has some faith, it's going to be an edifying reminder, but it's really built for people that are not currently in the Christian faith or a part of a Christian church. Anything I want to add to that, Elizabeth?
100% agree with that. It's a question that actually gets my heart beating super fast because it's exciting what Charlie wants to instill in the DNA here. I've been through it multiple times and been part of a church plant where we put it in our DNA, and it's an open forum for anyone at any stage. Some of the discussions are wild. We didn't think that they were going to be comments that were completely out of left field, but it's built for that. It's built for that, and it's been going on for so long, and they've changed it, they've modified it, made it really great in a sort of new media way. But it's the same message that's tried and true. There are no scenes. There's very little work. If they're interested in facilitating, 100% great.
Yeah, grab Elizabeth after too. If there's specific people, that's why I'm like, over the next few weeks, we'll talk about making invitations and including people within Alpha. So maybe some of those things will become more clear. But right now, just begin praying and saying, God, who is it that you might have in my network already that would benefit from these conversations? Shalati?
Is there like a store locator is what came to mind, but obviously not like into a directory. So like if you know someone somewhat local that wouldn't necessarily be sustainable to city host per se, but maybe like nearby other places that maybe this could be the start of that.
So you're asking about for Alpha specifically or for City Coast at large?
If you know someone who maybe could benefit from Alpha, but maybe lives in Long Island.
Okay.
Or maybe this would be the place.
Yes.
Long Island, but like.
Yeah. No, it's a great question because when you think of your relationships, so the question being around how do we maybe connect these sorts of resources, not just Alpha, but really what God is doing through City Coast at large, through people who aren't as hyper-local, which is a huge thing here. I feel like a big part of being a local church is being local, but there are so many things that happen that could benefit other people, like Alpha. Alpha does have, through their directory, you can search for local alphas. So if this was something where you're like, I want to go through it, and I want to, kind of keep tabs with a friend who's also going through it, you could help them find a location that's within proximity to them. It's in, I think it's like 29 million people in 160 plus countries have done Alpha. So it's a crazy, well-dispersed resource, but it could be kind of fun if it's like, hey, let's start together, and then we'll go kind of our Alpha routes. There probably is one somewhat local to anybody that we're thinking of. We're not even the only one in Fairfield County that does Alpha. So there's potentially locations that could be useful to people. And again, that's what I'm like, we're kingdom-minded. So if there's a way to help other people get closer to Jesus, even if they're not right here in City Coast, we want to be a part of doing that. And Alpha is a great resource for that. So, any other questions?
Yeah, will you be sending out mailers again?
Mailers.
I just have I had a couple friends say, I want to go to City Coast, and they live in Fairfield, and they probably just need another mailer.
Another mailer. Yeah, so I remember as I think about the value of mailers, I believe, this is an interesting thing in starting a church, and part of what I think makes a church healthy is you have to understand, just making people aware of it is a huge part of it. So there is kind of I would distinguish maybe what I call outreach from marketing. Okay, so sometimes we just market City Coast. We put out a mailer and hope that it, pray that it finds the right people, and we've seen that. Some people have found their way in via mailer. Sue, I'm looking at you. Some people have found their way into the koinonia via mailer. And so there's a certain amount of kingdom resources that we're comfortable investing in marketing. But there's a higher amount of kingdom resources that we want to invest in outreach, which is what we're talking about, this inclusion stuff. If we want to be a healthy church, then the healthiest churches are churches where people include other people. And the most beneficial types of invitations and connections that come when somebody connects another somebody to the body. So as much as we continue to do some of these marketing things, I think about probably in the first few years, we've spent probably close to $30,000 on marketing. Just to get the name out there, just to get stuff in front of people, just to kind of get people aware that there is a church called City Coast. But that's not the healthiest thing long term. The healthiest thing long term is going to be friends bringing friends, people including people. And so some of those dollars even that we've kind of put toward marketing are going to be more built now toward resourcing people, like City Coast swag. There's stuff that's a marketing thing, It's what is that? What is that? Well, this is the church that I'm a part of, So yeah, probably a little bit less on the cold call marketing stuff and a little bit more on the invitational materials and things like that. Is there a marketing question you have now,
Well, maybe. Is there a directory of when you showed the people, the 80 people or 100 people? Is there a directory for us to go look at? And there's some people whose faces I say, I recognize their faces. I don't know their name. I don't know anything about them. If we're going to be a community, it'd be nice to kind of have a little bit of a little bio or something. You may already have it, I just don't know it. So, but probably that's the case.
Yeah. Yes, so the question being, is there a church directory or kind of way for people to be digitally connected? Or the beauty and challenge of the world we live in, right? It's funny. We keep sampling different things to kind of make that a greater reality. When we first started, we were all in on Facebook and Instagram and these things that kind of put your pictures and your bios and all these things together. And let's try to use and harness kind of the energy around those spaces to make City Coast spaces. And we've seen some of that. We recently kind of moved into WhatsApp. We've been using that a little bit. The other thing is the threshold with which somebody becomes comfortable identifying with the church is another thing that we're oh yeah, I have a mailing list that I send the connection email through and stuff. But you would be, and you guys have seen a little bit when you do the connection too, you'd be amazed how quickly people run right past giving you their email address. They're I don't even want you to talk to me ever. They fill out a connection card or those sorts of things. And so it's something that I'm we continue to utilize the spaces that we think people already inhabit, but we have not created like a City Coast specific directory that's been made public for everybody to kind of access for a variety of reasons. And I don't know if we ever will. That's one that's kind of, yeah, there is a database that we utilize that kind of is part of how we organize a lot of our communication and stuff, but it's unlikely that that will be made public just because people have varying degrees of comfort with their information being out there. Yeah, that's possible. So planning centers, yeah, I'm like the database, yeah, planning center people is what it's called. That's where it's like, we kind of build our database through that. And I can look into that to see if there's an opt-in for people that may want to make that public. Because then if you have the app, you could be able to search people within City Coast. Jimmy, you had something?
Yeah, I have two things. Just going off of Jim. I remember early on when we were looking at the church, you guys posted a couple of videos of people introducing themselves as being part of the church. I think Jim was part of it, Elaine was part of it. And like, I feel like people want to do that, they can always, I don't know, you can send a mailer and see who wants to volunteer to do that. And then the second thing, will you post those slides anywhere? Because I like looking at the things you have there sometimes. So.
Yeah, I can. Are you talking the tables specifically? Yeah, I can probably put those. I'll link them in the on the YouTube stuff for today's message. Which I realize is still recording, so we're getting all these. Leslie, do you have something back? City Coast scrapbook. That's the book we're writing. Yeah. I think we listened to the Trolls movie while we were driving yesterday. I think that's what it is. Princess Poppy and her scrapbooks. Any other questions?
Does Alpha cost anything, or is it free? Because I know some of these programs you do have to pay like a small amount.
Yeah, so Alpha, one of the things that I love about Alpha, the question being, is there a cost to Alpha? One of the things I love about it is they really build the experience around a table. And the table can include, a full-on meal, or it can include, a simple gathering around of a table with drinks and snacks or something like that. So the cost of it would be that. They do make the resource available to the public for free, and you can opt in to support and donate and do some of those things. So yeah, we're exploring the utility of the resource at large, and if it becomes something that we do fold into the life of City Coast, which I anticipate we will, then at some level we'll support the global ministry of Alpha. Alexandra?
Do you foresee going into 2 services possibly in 2025?
Well, you see, that's why I put out a 2075 vision. It gives me 50 years to work with. 2 services in 2025 was the question. So you guys felt inside here, Christmas was 110 people once the kids were in this room. So once the kids came in, and their bodies are smaller, there were 110 people in the room at Christmas. And we had 150 people at Easter last year. So I would anticipate some conversations around whether Easter this year is the right time to try 2 services. So a single Sunday that we might give it a test run to see if we're there. If this is the most inclusive year of City Coast yet, and we tend to, we grow, exponentially, like what we said. Over the course of time, what I would hope is that we multiply by addition, which is if everybody brings 1, we double. Okay, so if we do that in the first half of 2025, and we see what it's like at Easter time, it's possible that in the fall of 2025, we would consider making 2 services the regular and normative kind of practice for the morning. But we probably have to be at the point where we're averaging about 150 for it to make sense for us to do that. So, not out of the question, but that's kind of the process. Also, just for fun, there's no guarantee that both of those services would be back-to-back morning services. Like we could maybe look at morning and evening. There's no guarantee that both of those services would be in this space. We could maybe do morning here and evening somewhere else. Yeah, there's lots of fun stuff that could come around the conversation for 2 services. So yeah, the deeper and more invested that you are in the church, the more you'll be part of making those decisions alongside of us. Like it's fun, exciting, and stuff to think about. I think by 2075, there will be a city coast in every city in Fairfield County along the coast. 50 years from now, we may see city coast, and I think part of that is I don't really think it's healthy or necessary for a church to grow beyond 1% of a community's population. So a church of 650 in Fairfield, a church of 250 in Westport, a church of 1,000 plus in Bridgeport, a church like churches that fit the communities that they're a part of makes sense to me. And I think our calling here has been to Fairfield County, and so it's fun to think, man, as early as 2025, what if there was another city and another service already beginning? That's really, could be cool.
So for my planner minds.
Planner minds, love it. Yes,
Alpha
ma'am.
week 1, regularly scheduled programming.
Mhm.
Alpha week 2, 3, 4, Sunday nights,
Mhm.
at what time? From what time to what time?
Like 5:30 to 7, I believe, is what we're looking at.
Okay. Yeah, does that include Super Bowl weekend?
I believe so, yeah.
Can we vote to jump? I'm just saying
No.
for community
Super Bowl.
participation, I'll make my life
Wow, I thought we'd have like 5 years before we had to have a Super Bowl conversation as a church, but yes, feasible to, worth
Just something
discussing,
to think about
yes.
in your mind.
Yeah.
For group participation.
Yes.
Push that back to Saturday instead of
That's
Sunday.
early.
Or early Sunday,
Yeah.
like
Like a
what time does
lunch.
the game start? Like lunch?
I say it's usually evening, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That's Sunday's out.
Yeah.
Where's your hope?
Planner mind, yes. Alpha, Super Bowl edition. Yes.
Game starts at 6, so
Yes.
just, some people like to be placed at 4.
Yeah. Some people are smoking meat as early as 12:30. Yeah. No, that's good to consider. We definitely will. I think part of it too is seeing in the beginning of January how the Alpha community is shaping up for Sunday night. And then it might be one of those things that we say, once we know the community that's participating, let's then make a plan based on what everybody's feeling. Fatima?
So what time on the 26th would Alpha be starting?
The
Is that before
26th?
service?
10 a.m. We'll start it in church that day.
Oh, it'll be instead.
It'll be, yeah, so we'll have we'll have kind of like this type of setup for Alpha when we're here, and we'll have like round tables in the room that day. So kids will come in and they'll do church as normal that morning, but adults, instead of having music and sermon and all that stuff, we'll have,
For the first time again.
Yep.
So it's all hard spinning now.
I'll stage it, yeah.
I mean, we'll start, it's a start with breakfast. There'll be some breakfast serving that will happen there, yes, yeah. All right.
I do have an interesting comment. I made it to Jay.
Yeah.
So when you were shown the charts, what really was interesting to me, I think it was in year 1, the average number in year 1 for attendees was 35. Is that correct?
That was the low.
The
Yeah, the
low.
low, yeah.
Okay. Then you went on to like the next chart and it showed like the volunteerism, and that number was also 35.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was really interesting because that means those 35 people who were low were consistently there throughout the year, helping to build this community.
Yeah, that could be the low, or like the floor for attendance are low weeks. There may be weeks that it's like, this is the people who are contributing, committed to volunteering and such. Yeah, I was kind of going off the volunteers and numbers were kind of like our rosters of help through those years. And yeah, that I'd have to look back and see if that was consistent year over year, if kind of our floor and our volunteer numbers are similar.
Because you had 55, and then volunteerism was at 50.
Yeah.
So there were 5 people, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's some turnover. That's what I was like, there's some turnover on the volunteer numbers year over year too. So that's interesting. But our goal is to be about 50%. 50% of our attendance or kind of involvement with Sundays if half that number of people are volunteering and contributing in some way, then that's a pretty healthy church volunteer ratio.
And what are my options to volunteer in case people don't know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Volunteer options. So I'll give the quick groupings for Sundays. For Sundays, we have hospitality environment. So that's like set up, and then that's environment team is set up. Hospitality is everything that kind of happens kitchen onward. Then our kids team, huge opportunity to serve in our kids team because the kids community keeps growing as our church grows as well. And so we have kids team stuff. Then we have music, and that revolves around some of the skill and things that people have with regards to using their talents in music. And then media production is the back kind of booth area for what we do on Sunday mornings. And then as of the beginning of 2025, the prayer team has gotten started. And so that will kind of be an extension of our hospitality team where people will be available to pray within our community on Sundays after church. And then beyond Sundays, what we've built is really our community team. And that's the group of people that we're trying to utilize in building out the discipleship and the spiritual formation of people within City Coast. And so you'll start to see, some of you guys got emails or things about being a facilitator within Alpha. That's part of community team. Others have been working toward, whether it was leading permission groups or being present in different events and different things that we've done. We're like, we'd be a table host within this team. We kind of group all of that up with community building, so community team. So there's the Sunday teams and the community team are probably the main ones right now.
Has there been any conversation around starting any Bible studies or anything like that?
Yes, so Alpha being the beginning of 2025 is the last piece in our organizational discipleship puzzle. So what we hope is that everybody who's a part of City Coast has been a part of Alpha and Rooted and Permission. Those are kind of the three introductions to spiritual formation that we hope people will walk through, kind of move through, that ask about Bible study. Beyond that, our community team, a handful of couples that are a part of community team, are starting to get ready to launch what will be like decentralized groups in communities that will include things like Bible studies moving forward. After Alpha, more to come. Anything else? I'm tired.
People have certain giftings, but they don't have the right outlet yet for volunteering. Could they create ways to volunteer?
Can we create ways to volunteer? Yes. Yes. Yes, I would say, part of even the addition of the prayer team was Grant saying, I feel like this is a need within the church. I'm willing to organize and administrate some of this. Is that possible to bring into the fold? And so absolutely, I feel like there are things, there's just, different gifts, different people, different desires. If you ever hear me say like, you come to me with an idea and I come back at you with, you should do that. That's kind of how it works. Like it's like, okay, if you just want to give me your idea, that's great. But if you want to give me your idea and your investment, then there's much more likelihood that those things will come to fruition and we'll start to see those things become part of the life of our church, which is part of the beauty of doing this together. So I would hope that as you think about your gifts and as you think about your desires, as you think about the things that you long to see in your church, that things that aren't currently on my radar or that we're not currently doing will emerge and become part of the life of this church. This is longer than a normal Sunday, guys. This is a church meeting. We're going to the screensavers here. That's okay. The kids are watching a movie and we got plenty of bagels. Let me pray, and if there are other questions, I can respond to other things that can address those here afterwards. But God, you are so good to all of us, and specifically God to City Coast. We see your hand forming and shaping this faith community, and we're just grateful to be a part of it, grateful to be a part of what you're doing. And in the year to come, God, I pray that you would lead all of us forward, lead all of us into deeper relationship with you. Cultivate here at City Coast a beautiful fellowship, God, that is a reflection of heaven on earth. God, may we have a firm foundation as we build out this new framework. May we live well-built lives. May we write a story worth telling over the next year, 10 years, 50 years, however long it is, God, we want to be found faithful. So be honored in the work and life of this church. We praise you and we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.